Welcome to my channel. My name's Lucy. I share videos on the topic of long COVID, chronic fatigue syndrome, and mind-body approaches that can be used to help those conditions and other mind-body conditions. I also offer coaching to people who are interested in applying this approach to their own recovery and need some support doing that. In today's video, I wanted to talk about somatic tracking and basically just explain what it is. For someone who's heard the term but doesn't know what it is or doesn't really understand how it can help, I wanted to just give a brief description of what it is and what it isn't and what the aims are. What I share in this video is not medical advice or mental health advice. I'm sharing ideas based on what I've read and based on my own experience. So somatic tracking is an exercise where we pay attention to the body and we notice symptoms in the body. The aim with somatic tracking is to feel more neutral towards symptoms. So that might mean feeling a bit less fearful. It might mean noticing symptoms without feeling like they're a threat. And it's teaching our brains to be accepting of symptoms, to feel safe with symptoms, and to be okay with that experience that we might have when symptoms are uncomfortable or symptoms are persistent or symptoms are challenging. And one of the reasons that we want to do this is because when we have chronic unexplained symptoms, often there's a lot of fear because for a long time we maybe didn't understand what was causing the symptoms, how long they'd go on for. We were fearful that they'd get worse. And so naturally our brain perceives the symptoms as dangerous. And we want to work on changing this and starting to build up a more positive association with noticing symptoms in our body. And this can be pretty challenging when we have a high level of fear towards symptoms. One main aspect of somatic tracking is a mindfulness aspect, and we're trying to generate a compassionate, curious, open, interested awareness of our symptoms and the body. Normally, when we perceive symptoms, we might have difficult thoughts come up or fear or other emotions arising because we're resistant to the discomfort that we feel with symptoms. So it can be quite challenging to be curious and open and observe symptoms as though they're something interesting to observe. The aim of this is to build this new relationship with symptoms where our brain and our body are able to start perceiving the symptoms as safe and not to perceive those symptoms as a threat. This area of responding to symptoms is really helpful because once our brain perceives less threat from symptoms, we fear symptoms less. And that can help with any vicious cycle in which fear might be driving the perpetuation of symptoms. So some of the ways that we do this in somatic tracking is reappraisal. So that might be using our thoughts or our words to remind ourselves that we are safe and we're okay. With this aspect, it's really helpful if we can choose words that we believe. So if you're saying I'm safe, I'm okay, but really it doesn't resonate at all, it might be worth thinking of something that does resonate, that's on the path to telling your brain and your body that you're safe. So that might be, my symptoms have changed slightly, and that shows me that they're not as consistent as I think they are. And if they can change slightly, that means they can change, and that's a good thing, or that is encouraging. So we're just trying to take a baby step towards telling ourselves or fostering this belief that we are okay and that we're safe and that the symptoms are not dangerous. In somatic tracking, we might also notice feelings in the body that are positive, or we might notice in the body where we feel compassion or kindness or care or curiosity or openness. And we're linking these feelings that might be safer feelings with the experience of also noticing symptoms. So this might be a very gentle awareness that we're putting on symptoms. We're not trying to force ourselves. We're just making new connections. That paying attention to symptoms, whilst we're also focusing on compassion or curiosity, we're starting to connect those feelings in the body. We're also becoming curious about emotions that might be behind the symptoms. So we might be asking ourselves, is there a message behind this symptom? Or can I notice anything else coming up in the body right now? Is there even a hint of a specific feeling, like sadness or anger? Sometimes if we're doing a somatic tracking exercise, a memory might pop up of something that happened in the last few days that is attached to a particular emotion. And just having the space for curiosity and interest in what else is going on in the body and whether there could be an emotional experience can be very helpful for recognizing things that we might otherwise miss, especially if what we normally do is not pay attention to the body and try to ignore how we feel. Another aspect of somatic tracking could be actually the opposite. So maybe we're used to really focusing with a lot of intensity on the body, and instead of doing this, we're aiming to reduce the intensity and notice things in a really curious, open way, where we're not trying to fix or change, where we're just being curious. Because sometimes people who have chronic symptoms are really good at working hard, being dedicated, being persistent, focusing on a task and achieving what they need to achieve to get that task done. This can be helpful in certain areas of life, but in other areas it can help us to tone down that level of intensity. And somatic tracking can be an exercise where we can practice this, but also where if we can tone down that level of intensity, it can really help us with the process. Because when we are using less intense energy, we're just naturally sending signals and messages to the brain that we're relaxed, we don't need to do things quickly or to put pressure on ourselves or to do things intensely. Another thing that we can bring into somatic tracking is visualizations. And these can help us build up more neutral or safe associations with symptoms. So for instance, we might have an image of a safe place. So I once did a somatic tracking exercise with someone whose safe place or place where they loved spending time was in a forest, walking through a forest. And for this particular person, they had pain in their back, which was a persistent symptom that wasn't going away. So we linked up those two ideas, the image of walking through a forest and also a gentle attention on the spine and the back. And we imagined that the spine was the path through the forest and that we were walking through the forest, looking at the trees, being really curious about what the leaves were looking like. Were they moving? Were they changing? Were they falling? What were the colours? What were the textures? And what we were doing was noticing some of the sensations for this person in their back, whilst also bringing in an image that they find safe and grounding, as a way to build up a new perspective and perception of those sensations. With somatic tracking, sometimes people will get a dramatic change. Their symptoms might dramatically reduce. But more often than not, that doesn't happen. And it's really important also to realize that this isn't the aim. The aim is to build up this more neutral and safe attention and association with symptoms. And it's helpful to remind ourselves of this every time we do somatic tracking, because sometimes what happens is, if we've had an experience before in which somatic tracking really helped us, then we naturally want that to happen again. And it's just human nature that we really want our symptoms to reduce and to go away. Sometimes that is something we're hoping for at the beginning of a somatic tracking exercise, but it's helpful just to notice if we're hoping for that, and to remind ourselves that that's not the aim, and that it can be really helpful even if that doesn't happen. Even if the symptoms are the exact same at the end of the exercise, it might be that we've just noticed the symptoms in a slightly different way, or that we've noticed a change, or we've perceived the symptoms differently for even 2 seconds. Let me know what you find challenging about somatic tracking, what you find has been really helpful with using somatic tracking exercises. Sometimes as well, somatic tracking takes time and it's a practice. It's not something that we will notice on the first time we try it, that it will dramatically change things, or that we'll notice a big difference. It's something that with time can help us. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.